Okay, everyone. Well, I appreciate you joining me here today. We've got some audio going, and I sort of worked out the video issues. But anyways, we'll get going. So this is just a redo of last week, where we're going to go over some intermediate configurations on the ConsoliDator Plus. And just as a quick reminder, since it's been 2 weeks, the last time we met, we went over how to set up an input, which would be like a physical input to the unit. We learned how to turn that input into a channel, and then how to take a screen and add channels to it. How do we set up an output, and then we turned an output into a viewable channel. So we're actually just going to go ahead and expand on what we learned last time. So here's what we're going to go over today. We are going to take a look at how to program soft keys on a screen, or those, the function keys. How to configure alarms the best way. I'll tell you what I mean by that in a minute. How to create a new color scheme, how to create some timers, and then we'll take a look at how to tie a physical relay output to a configured alarm. And again, I'll explain what that means later. So without further ado, here's how it's going to work. I am going to switch over to a screen share. Now, the gray box that you were experiencing last time, I don't know what the deal is with that, but I did figure out if I open a dialog box, close it, and then open it again, you should be able to see it. So I'm not trying to make any sudden movements, but if you see me Xing out of a box quickly, that's why. I'm just trying to make it appear. So if you have any complications with the video, please do chat in. I did figure out how to monitor the chat while I'm screen sharing. So let's give it a shot. All right, let me check. All right, so I got the chat up, and we're going to get going. So the first thing we want to do is figure out how to program the function keys on a screen. So, the first thing we have to have is a screen. So what I did was I built up, actually it's the same screen that we built during our last session. And so, again, the first thing you want to do here is name the screen. And then you can add your channels, just like we did last time. But there's no compatible channels there. But what we're interested in is down here, this F1 through F4 section. So this is where these are called function keys, or I've been referring to them the entire time as soft keys. So let's just go ahead and pick one. We'll just pick F4. So you should probably see a gray box right now. So I'm going to click out of that. And now you should be able to see it. If you cannot see it, please do chat in, because I do have the chat open. So when we click on one of these boxes, we get a bunch of different categories, so to speak. So these are the different functions we can perform. So we can either do none, or we can do screens. So like, let's say we want to jump from one screen to another, next screen or previous screen. Or we can view dates and times, we can view inputs. Pretty much what the screen means is we can do something where the ConsoliDator Plus is going to show us something. Now, for the most part, usually what folks use these types of buttons for is for controlling a relay, turning it on and off. And so that's what I'm going to show you here today. So when we click on the F4, this screen pops up. Now, let's say I want to do a relay function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this relay button here. And now we have all of these different subcategories. So basically what we did was we choose relay, because that's what we want to be controlling. And then within that menu, we also get all of these different function types. So for example, we have reset info. So this reset info, so what that means is, I've shown you before when we have relays up on the screen, it shows the accumulated runtime, the cycle counts, and you've seen me use the function keys to reset that information. So that's what this reset info does. And then when you click on something like that, you just choose which relay it is that you want to control, okay? Now the next one here is reset info confirm. So it does the exact same thing, except it's going to have you confirm your choice before it resets that information. I think it's really clever, especially if people are walking by this type of thing all the time and actually hit a button, it helps prevent against any accidental information resets. But the ones that most people are concerned with when it comes to using a function key for a relay is everything else down here. And this is all about control. So for example, we have force on. So what that will do is it will literally force the relay to change state when the button is pressed. Now, it will only hold that relay closed or open, depending on how it's wired, if the button is continuously pressed. So you would have to press the button and hold it down for that relay to stay in that state, okay? And it's the same thing for force off. We can force a relay off or to go to its normal state, and again, it's momentary. You press the button and hold it down. Once you let it go, the relay goes back the way it's supposed to be. Now we have all these other ones here too, manual on and off. So what manual on and off will do is that will allow you to, so for example, manual on, what that allows you to do is I press the button, it turns the relay on, and then I can walk away from it. I don't have to hold my finger on the button to keep that relay on. And again, when you select one of these categories, you then just select which relay you want to control, or you can do all of them. Now, the one that I think is really nice is this one here, manual on/auto. So what that means is that will allow me to turn a relay on with one press of a button, but it'll stay on until I press it again. But when I press it again, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to turn the relay off. What it does is it allows the relay to behave the way it's supposed to, the way it's programmed. So for example, let's say I have a batching application and I want to batch 10 gallons. Well, I'm 5 gallons through my batch and I want to pause it. Well, I can press one of these buttons, the manual on button here, okay? And that's going to pause the batch. And then when I press it again, it's going to turn on because it's within its program set point to be on. But if I had paused, let's say I paused the batch, and then all of a sudden I decided I wanted to reset my total or stop my batch, when I press that button again, it's going to be off. So it's a little tricky to explain. It's much easier to read through in the study guides. But basically, that's what we do here. That's how you set up a function key. You choose which one you want, F1 through F4, and then you choose what you want to do. Do you want to simulate a channel? Do you want to jump to a certain screen or view some certain information? Or do you want to play with the internal horn? It's all possible. So, you know what I should do is show you. So let's just select one. We're just going to do reset info. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And now you'll notice that on my F4, it says reset info relay 1. If I had named my relay, it would obviously have the name of the relay there. So that is how we program the function keys that we've looked at so many times. Again, we can reset totals with these. We can do all sorts of different things. Now, the next thing we want to do or learn about is how to configure an alarm the best way. So here's what I mean by the best way. There are a million different ways that you can program or configure the consolidator to do something. And so that's not limited to alarms. So what I mean by that is, let's go back to like a ProView, one of our legacy products. If you wanted to configure an alarm on that product, basically what you're doing is you're just configuring the relay. You're just telling the relay when to turn on and off. And it's pretty simple. There was no visual indication on our legacy products for an alarm. But the Consolidator Plus does have the visual advantage with the alarms. So it's not just setting up a relay. We want to set up an alarm channel first. So how we do that is we come over to the left here so that we can find what we're looking for, or the object we're looking for. In this case, we're going to go to Alarms, and then we're going to hit New Alarm. And again, the first thing you can do here is name your alarm. So I'm going to make this a high-level alarm, so we're just going to go ahead and name that high level. Now, the next thing we want to choose is the type of alarm. Now, this is really cool. So the default selection is single source, meaning you just have one channel and you want one alarm. But we can get really fancy. For example, we have multi-source. What that means is I can actually have multiple channels tied to this one alarm. So, like, for example, let's say I have 10 tanks, and I don't care which tank gets into a high alarm. I want to know if any of them do. Well, I can, excuse me, I can use a multi-source. Or let's say I have interval. So interval means that I can decide to alarm based on elapsed time or, how many gallons have flown, some sort of interval. We have alarms or and alarms and. I'm going to get into these deeply next week because this is the or and alarms are the most powerful feature of the ConsoliDator Plus, and you'll see why next week. So we're not going to get too bogged down in that. Lastly, we have day and time. So we could actually go ahead and control something based on the day and time. But for this particular session, I want to focus on single source, just to keep it simple. So we want a single source alarm, and we want the input to this alarm to be our channel. So we could go to our channels, and, well, there it is. There's our level channel. So I want to go ahead and select my level channel. And when I do that, we have our set point and our reset points down. And they're going to be automatically filled out with these numbers. Those are meant to be edited. Those are just there as factory defaults. So this is a high-level alarm. So what I want is I want this alarm to be active when the tank climbs to 80% capacity. So I'm going to change my set point to 80. And I have my reset point. When do I want the relay to turn off? Well, let's say 50% capacity. So when the tank drains out to 50% capacity, we're all set. I don't need this alarm anymore. So then we have these other options here. We have on delay and off delay. Now that is pretty self-explanatory. So an on delay would be as our tank climbs to 80% capacity. When it reaches that, we can tell the relay to wait a certain period of time before it actually acknowledges the alarm. And the same thing with the off. As we drain down to 50%, I can tell the alarm to wait a certain period of time before it clears the alarm condition. So those can be used for multiple different reasons. Primarily, from my experience, is if you have like sloshing in a tank where you're near that trigger point and you don't want the sloshing to be constantly turning your alarm on and off, you give it a delay so that if the sloshing or if that fluctuation in the level were to continue for, let's say, more than a minute, okay, now you know that you need to throw an alarm. So that's what those are used for primarily. And then we have this break. So what this break does is this is looking for a break on this channel. So if this level channel, let's say the transmitter, the wires get cut and there's a break on that channel, that's what this is for. And this will allow you to either turn the alarm off if it's on, turn the alarm on if it's off, or stay as it is. No matter which state it's in, just operate as normal, whether you have a break or not. Most folks are going to use the alarm on. Now, lastly, we have these checkboxes here. You know how we love these checkboxes? They're so easy for configuration rather than having to write in code or anything. So what these checkboxes allow you to do is basically you can think of these checkboxes as, if my alarm is true, do we want to sound the horn? There's an internal horn on the ConsoliDator. If my alarm is true, do we want the alert button to show up? You remember the alert screen that we learned about, and when we get into an alarm, that menu button says alert and starts flashing at us? Well, we can turn that on or off with this checkbox. And then we have automatic and ACK anytime. These two are how you would configure if you wanted to do latching relays or latching with clear, which is just a reset function. The default is to have everything automatically reset when our set and reset points are reached. So I usually leave those on, but if you do need a latching relay, you can literally just go ahead and click that button, and now it's a latching relay. So that is how you create an alarm the best way. So we're going to go ahead and save that. And so now that is an alarm. Now, the next thing I want to show you real quick is how to create the new color schemes. So you notice here we have color scheme, and the same thing on channels and totals. So let's make one ourselves. And to do that, there's a couple different ways we can do it, but we're going to learn it the correct way first. And so we're going to come over to the left side of the screen. That's where we find all the new objects we want to create. And I'm going to scroll down here to System. Oops, here we go. And then I'm going to come down here to Display. So we got System, Display, and then I had Colors and Alarm Colors. So I'm going to explain the difference in 2 seconds. First, let's choose Colors. This is going to be a color scheme that could be programmed for any channel, any type, pretty much anything that's visible on the screen can have a color scheme. And so to create a new one, all we do is click New, enter in a name. It could be anything you want. Let's just go ahead. We'll just name it Pink. Why not? And then from here, we choose whether we want the text, the background, or the bar graph to be whichever color. And so it's good to proceed with caution with this, because you want to make sure that the colors you choose are going to balance well. You know, for example, you don't want to have a yellow background with green letters. That might not look that great. So you have to be a little mindful of which colors you choose. So let's just keep this simple. We're going to keep the text black. Let's change the background of the channel to be this green color, and let's make the bar graph white. Why not? Okay. So now that I have that, oh, I'm sorry. Before we do that, we have this little box down here that says Show Alarm Condition using Alarm Color Settings. So when a channel goes into an alarm, you've seen over and over again that we can change the color of the channel and the bar graph and all that and have it flash different colors. To do that, we quite literally leave this box checked. So the default setting is that when a channel goes into an alarm, it changes colors. If you don't want it to do that, just uncheck that box, and now it's not going to do that. So it's, again, very simple, just clicking. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that on because that's the default setting. Now, how do we actually apply these? Well, let's go up to our level channel, and you notice that the color scheme here is default. So I'm going to click on Color Scheme, and look at that. Our custom color scheme is there. I'm going to select that. Now, what's really cool is it actually gives you a nice little preview of how the channel is going to look on the screen. So you can tell whether your color choice makes sense or not before you write it to the ConsoliDator. So now, typically, I wouldn't use white for a bar graph, but I just wanted to show you exactly how the ConsoliDator shows you your color choice and if it makes sense. While we're talking about colors, we also have this alarm color setting. And so this is going to be the exact same type of thing. It's going to set up exactly the same way we set up our other color schemes, except what happens is this will only be available for alarms when you create alarms. So let's create a new one. And I'm just going to name it Alarm, because why not? So this is how it works. This here is showing you normal condition. Okay, so normal condition, alarm condition. So basically what happens is when we get to an alarm, we can have the text turn red, or you know what, let's say it turns white. We can have the background change a different color, and let's just make it yellow, because why not? And then I can make the bar graph any color I want. Let's leave that red, because I like red. The last thing we can do is choose which ones flash and which ones don't. So you've seen in our previous sessions when we have an alarm, things start flashing, and this is exactly how we select that. You just click these boxes here. So you can either have them flash or not at all. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to leave that color choice and I'm going to actually apply it to that alarm that we just made. So let's go ahead. Oh, there it is. There's my alarm color. And so there you go. So that's how we create new color schemes and apply them. Now, there's another way you can do it. I could just come into this alarm, click on the color schemes, and add a new one right from here. I could do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just wanted to show you the quote-unquote proper way to do it first. And that can be done on the channels as well, not just on the alarms. Make sure that we, okay. Alrighty, so the next thing I want to show you, which is pretty cool, is how to create timers. So the example of this is actually, and the study guide is actually pretty cool. I went a little overboard with with the explanation of it. But let's say we want to create a new timer. Well, we're going to come over to the left side of the screen as always to find the object we want to create. We click on timers and we start a new one. And we name our timer because we name everything, right? And we're just going to name this one timer because I'm just so original. Now, in this particular scenario, let's just pretend for a second that we want to keep track of how long an alarm has been running, right? We get an alarm, which is a high-level alarm, and we want to know how long that alarm has been active and be able to alarm on that, to be able to alarm after a certain period of time. So check it out. So we want to make the input, in this case, because I want to time an alarm, I'm going to make the input to this. Maybe I just lied to you. Oh, no, there it is. I want to make the inputs to this to be that alarm, that high-level alarm we just created. The next thing it asks you is power up. So what this means is how does the timer react when you cycle the power to the device? And so you can do stop and reset, stop without reset, reset and start, or start without resetting. Most of the time, I just leave it on stop and reset. That's just the default, and I don't see anything wrong with that. In what I do, I don't usually cycle the power, so it doesn't bother me. The other thing is error. So what that means is if there's a break on if there's a break on the channel, or if there's some sort of error on the channel, you can control the timer. So you can have it stop, stay as it is, or break. Now, the next section here is where it gets really interesting. So we have to control this timer somehow, right? We don't want it to just continually go on and on and on and on and count to infinity. No. We want to know when an alarm turns on, how long it's been on for, and when it turns off. And we do that with these three boxes, these three items here. Reset, start, and stop. So basically what we're doing is we're telling the timer when to reset, when to start, and when to stop. And we do that using very specific language. We do that using words like rising, falling, rising, and falling. So, again, this alarm that we're basing this off of is a high-level alarm when our tank gets to 80%, and the alarm goes away when we get back down to 50%. So, I want this timer to start counting as our tank gets to 80%, as it climbs to 80%. So I want this timer to start when it's rising, okay? Now, when do I want this to stop? When do I want the timer to stop? Well, I want the timer to stop when our alarm condition clears. So our alarm condition clears as our tank empties to 50% capacity. So I want the alarm to stop when we're falling to 50%. See, these words are just describing how we get to the set point. It's just telling the timer, because let's say we're at 100% capacity. Well, if we then drain down to 80% capacity, that's okay. I don't want the timer to start then. I only want it to start as we're approaching 80% from the lower level. And then we also have this reset here. And so usually what I do for reset is the following for this specific application where we're timing an alarm. And then we have this countdown box. So let's just say, for example, that what we want to do is if we get a high-level alarm and that alarm has been on for 10 minutes without anyone addressing it, we want to know. We want to know that, hey, 10 minutes have passed and nobody has touched this alarm. What we can do is we say count down. We tell it how many minutes. So I'm just going to type in 10. So we're going to do 10 minutes. So what this means is the alarm is going to start counting down from 10 minutes as the level of the tank gets to 80%, as it climbs to 80%. As the tank empties to 50%, we want this timer to stop and reset. Now now I'm going to go ahead and save this. So now that's my timer. But now wait a second. What if I want to alarm based on that time limit? So if that timer gets down to 0 and that alarm condition is still true, well, we want to know, right? So let's go ahead and just create another alarm. And this new alarm is going to be a single source. My input is going to be the timer. Now you might be thinking, well, wait a minute. How are we going to, what are these set points and reset points? How do we do a set point and a reset point on a timer that's just counting? Well, we have to think about this from a logical standpoint. So we want this alarm to trigger when our timer gets to 0. While our timer is counting down from 10 minutes to 0, our alarm is on. Or I'm sorry, the timer is on. Okay? When the timer gets to 0 and stops counting, our timer is off. So here's what we want to do. We want the set points, we want this alarm to turn on when our timer turns off. So I want my set point to be 0 or false or off. I want my reset point to be 1 or on or true or active. So it's coming from a binary logic standpoint. So when I do this, if I were to write this to a consolidator, when our high-level alarm is triggered, our timer starts counting down from 10 minutes. When the timer gets to 0 and the alarm condition has not cleared, this alarm that we just created then becomes active. And it will reset or go away once our timer has reset. And how does our timer reset? Well, our timer resets when our tank drains to 50% capacity. So I know that was a lot to take in. And again, it's explained really well in the study guides. But that's how you create a timer. And there's a million different things you could do with the timers. This is just one that I thought of. It's actually an application request that comes up quite a bit, wanting to see how long an alarm has been on. And so, with that is 30 minutes. And so we successfully went through this entire session. Now I'm going to go look at my chat, and we're just going to hopefully everyone saw everything. Okay, so I got some questions. Someone asked, can we use different engineering units between the set point and the reset? No. I don't think so. Maybe I don't understand the question completely, but no, because a channel is only scaled in one engineering unit, and since the alarm is being controlled off of a scaled channel, I don't think it could. But if you have a specific like application or anything, I'd be happy to look at it and figure out a way to make it work. The third question was, with the break, are we to assume there's wire supervision? I'm not entirely sure what that means. I don't I don't know if you were just being funny, but I'm not really sure what that means. And someone said they didn't understand the relationship between the alarm and timer, and that's totally understandable. I totally get that. Did anybody else not understand the relationship between the alarm and the timer? You can just raise your hand if you want. Okay, so I'm just gonna answer the question. So the relationship between the alarm and the timer was, we wanted to know, like, here's the story I gave in the study guide. So a high-level alarm occurs. The operator sees it and goes, okay, but they're in the middle of doing something. So they walk away to go finish what they were doing. While they were doing something else, they totally forgot about that high-level alarm. So that tank is still just chilling at 80% capacity, and it's not supposed to be. What we do with the timer is we make it so that if that alarm has been active for 10 minutes and nobody has gone over there to clear the alarm or anything, then we can trigger a secondary alarm that then lets somebody know. Maybe it sends a text message to the boss, or it sets off a bigger horn. It's just another way to know that, hey, if you ignore your alarms for 10 minutes or however long you want, there is a way to alert somebody of that fact. So if that explanation wasn't clear enough, I'll be happy to get on the phone or send you an email about it, because I know it can be kind of tricky, and I'm not going to lie, it was pretty tricky for me to explain it. Please let me know if there's any feedback you have about the presentation, the way I explained things. Was it clear enough? Should I use different examples? So anything you can help me to help you make this class as valuable as possible would be greatly appreciated. So really appreciate everyone showing up today. I'm glad we had no technical issues. We will continue our class next week as just a regularly scheduled class, and we're going to go over schedules and timers in more detail. So that's actually going to be pretty fun. I wanted to show you the timers today just to give you a little sample of what we're going to go over, but we're going to take a look at those much more next week. So again, thank you everyone, and have a great week.